Kia ora e te iwi and welcome to The Chew, coming at you from Te Kirikiri here in Frankton, Queenstown. Ko Arrowtown Dad tēnei. And today we have a special guest. We have the Southland candidate for the Opportunity Party with us today, Bianca Beebe. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming along. And I also have with me the Chew political commentator, Alexa Forbes.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora kōrua.
Right, so to kick things off, I'll just get you to introduce yourself, however you feel like introducing yourself to everyone.
Sure. Kia ora. I'm Bianca Beebe. As you said, I'm the Southland candidate for Opportunity Party. Everybody calls me B. And as you can tell from the accent, I'm originally from the US, but I live in continual hope that people won't hold it too much against me. I've been here for 14 years, calling Aotearoa home, and very happy and grateful to do so.
Great. So American, we're certainly not going to hold that against you. So first question, where were you born? Like which state, which town, and were you brought up in the same area as well?
Yeah, I was born in South Florida, born and raised there. A lot of people laugh when I say that Queenstown has some similarities to Miami.
Really?
Certainly not in weather.
Yes.
But that kind of dynamic where you have this incredibly beautiful natural environment that becomes this tourist playground that in many ways the rest of either the state or the country depends on for economic viability, but it's at the expense of locals. And if you are a local, you have a completely different experience from living there versus if you're a tourist.
Yeah.
And very similar dynamics with temporary workers and migrant exploitation. So
Really?
I often speak just as much Spanish here as I do in South Florida.
Crazy.
Yeah, so I think it felt very familiar fairly quickly.
And what was life like growing up as young Bianca growing up there?
I haven't thought about that in a while, to be honest with you. Boring?
Really?
Yeah, I think it was a very suburban kid.
Yeah.
And it's one of the huge differences that I see from my friends who have moved somewhere with public infrastructure, especially public transport, of how different it is to grow up somewhere where you have a lot of freedom and you don't have car dependency. Florida is entirely car dependent.
Right.
And it's very, very hot most of the time, so it's unpleasant to get around on foot.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I was a very nerdy kind of studious kid, so didn't do anything particularly nuts when I was young. I think I'm one of the few of because I was, just all of my friends were also like academic nerds, and after undergrad, we all kind of were expected to go to grad school. So various people went and did their PhDs or they became doctors, etc. And I ended up going to New Zealand on what was supposed to be a 1-year working holiday trip, and it ended up changing my life, and now I'm here.
Was that after you did a degree?
Yeah, after my undergrad.
Yeah, so was that the American equivalent of an OE?
I suppose so, yeah. It's a little bit less of a standardized thing in the States. Americans don't travel internationally as much as New Zealanders do.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Why New Zealand?
It looked so astonishingly beautiful.
That's
and
true.
I think the 100% pure NZ campaign really got us in America.
That's good.
Yeah, we still really think that everything just kind of looks like Milford Sound.
Yeah. Yes. Even central Auckland, not all. So that was New Zealand your first destination?
It was, yeah.
Wow. You didn't think about going anywhere else? Was it just what you saw on that campaign? I'm going to go and check it out.
Oh, I mean, not even like that campaign specifically. I just, had seen New Zealand, and I have a very international family. I'm Dutch Indonesian, and I also have grown up in Europe a fair bit. So I grew up traveling with both my parents quite a lot. And New Zealand was one of the places I had never been before.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh.
My mom had been to New Zealand, though, in her youth as well, and I thought that was pretty cute. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that just an American version of an OE again, or for your mum?
No, I mean, she's not American. She was living in Singapore at the time, I believe, and she ended up sailing from Singapore to New Zealand with somebody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Random.
Yeah.
Love Singapore.
Yeah.
Love that place. It's so hot. I don't like it when it's wet, but every other time it's great. So you came to New Zealand. Was it what you thought it would be? And where did you land first? Did you come straight to Queenstown?
No. I landed in Auckland, and I've lived in Christchurch, Wellington, Auckland. I spent a lot of years in Auckland, and I came to Queenstown only a few years ago. I think I came down for some labor organizing stuff, and I think I did the fairly standard Jaffa, why am I in Auckland thing? And then moved down here.
Great.
And yeah, I mean, New Zealand, I think I certainly wasn't planning on moving here 14 years ago.
Yeah.
I just ended up falling in love with it.
Of course.
And so I stayed.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so why Queenstown in particular? Just because of the beauty? Was that the idea?
Yeah, I think it's, again, just tired of living in a bit of a concrete jungle. I don't think anybody comes to New Zealand for our cities. We don't build great cities. I don't reckon.
Yes, that's true.
The natural environment is what really thrives here. So came down for that.
Yes. Well, we know what we think about a thriving natural environment and the threat that it's undergoing at the moment.
Yeah.
But and when you got here, was it obvious to you at the time that this was going to be a long-term stay in Queenstown in particular?
No, not immediately. I think I was just open to it and loved it, and it worked out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you have any family or friends at all? Or did you just come over by yourself?
Very independent family. People ask me when I started traveling a lot. They're like, "Oh, what do your parents think?" I'm like, I'm 23 years old.
Yeah.
They think I'll see you on vacation, maybe. So no, a very independent family with people all over the world.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a pretty standard for my family in particular.
And do you go back to visit family at all?
Occasionally, yeah. I don't really rate Florida, but I go back to New York when I pass through the States. That's where my best friend lives. Yeah. And my mom's come over here before as well.
Ah, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do you have any other siblings, or you're an only child?
A variety of them. Both my parents were married and remarried and divorced and stuff. So there's a contingent of us.
Sounds like me. Yeah. So now do you consider Queenstown your long-term home?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's sort of move along into your decision to go into politics. Now, as I understand, becoming a candidate is actually not your first foray into the whole political realm. Right? So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into politics in New Zealand for the first time?
Sure. So I am a public health researcher. I've got my master's in public health, did that around the pandemic. And from there entered this policy space fairly quickly, both in the States and here. And I've worked for various nonprofits, particularly trying to advocate for policy for particular interest groups.
Yeah.
And so I have experience with lobbying and the legislative process and how that works on an international and on a New Zealand scale.
Right. So the research foray, how did that link into the political side of things? Did you sort of look to say, well, I need to find a way to make change, and I need to align myself with a political party to try and enact that change. Well, how did you end up aligning yourself into politics in particular?
New Zealand is a very unusual place in how much power Parliament has, and also how much access you have to power brokers in this country.
Right.
So pretty early on, even when working in a nonprofit, you have the kind of access to the people who can make the decisions that have quite substantial material changes fairly easily, which is one of the really incredible things about organizing in this country.
Yeah.
It's not like that in most places. You have so many layers to go through.
Yeah.
And here, you can be on a first name basis with lots of MPs, and you can, get things done. And because we only have, there's only one house in Parliament, there aren't lots of different branches. The executive is integrated within it.
Yes.
It's a bit of a one-stop shop, which is it can be terrible, can be wonderful, depending on your opinion on who's in charge. We always say it like, America is kind of like steering the Titanic. You can't move it. It's just going.
Yep.
Whereas New Zealand's sort of like giving somebody a race car, and you hope they know how to drive.
Yeah, you're quite right, actually. So when I think about, because of the whole Donald Trump situation, I unfortunately spend a little too much time figuring out what's going on in American politics. So I understand what you mean when you say these layers. So there's, in America, they have like the Senate and they have Congress and they have these different sort of branches, right?
Yep.
Now, you mentioned it can be both a good and bad thing to have New Zealand's sort of structure. The good is obviously we cut through the red tape, we get direct access into people. What do you think the downside of that structure would be?
There's basically no check on power. Parliament is essentially dictator of New Zealand for 3 years. So if they're doing things that you want, you're really pleased by that. And if they are doing things that you think are quite destructive, there's essentially no way to stop it. It's almost dependent on people acting in good faith and having a willingness to almost rein themselves in. So, if you look at the process of passing things under urgency, right? That doesn't exist in a lot of other places where you can submit legislation in 48 hours, it's law. That's quite odd. And I think you guys talked about the Mike Smith case a couple of weeks ago as well. And the fact that a Supreme Court can make a ruling and then you can retroactively go back and change the law is unusual in a legal sense. And New Zealand not having a constitution is also a bit unusual. They, depending on which law professor you ask, they'll say that, New Zealand just doesn't have it has an unwritten constitution. To which I would say that's not a constitution.
No, it's not. I get bothered by this whole idea that we have these foundational ideas that we follow. But it's still not a constitution.
It's a guideline, not a rule. Right? And that's very New Zealand, right? I think in general, New Zealanders are extremely accommodating people. They are very averse to creating unnecessary conflict and making a fuss about things. So the idea that we should all follow reasonable guidelines and work together is something that it seems very natural would occur to New Zealanders. But certainly from an outsider lens, there's always my first question is, okay, well, how are you going to make them? And it's funny how often New Zealanders are like, well, that's not how we do things,
That's true.
Which is what's beautiful about this place. Right? It's amazing.
It feels like we have operated in a high trust model. And that trust has now been broken. And so now we're seeing the dark side of New Zealand's personality, which is, of course has always been there, but now it's really coming to the fore, and it's coming to the fore in our politics and in our communities.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if a constitution would change or help that. It would probably be a good start. What will we base it in? Where does it get going from? Well, I'd have to start with Te Tiriti, because
a lot
that's
of big
the
questions
fundamental.
there. Yep.
And so,
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to know.
And I think it's also, it's not like nobody's ever asked that question before. We have Hatiki Mai, we have Hapuapua, we have a lot of guidelines of people who have already proposed various ways that process could begin. And we somehow just kind of keep pontificating as though no one's ever really...
We kick it down the road because we're always scared of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But at some point we have to either rebuild trust or build the law.
Yeah.
It's got to be one or the other.
I mean, it's a very existential question, so of course it's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a real existential question for us, because I think, some of us see the need for checks and balances now. We've gotten away with this trust model for too long because we haven't had the nefarious intentions at the top. But I feel like we do these days, which is why we have people that are doing things without being checked, without any proper safeguards. So do you think the reaction should be to create another level similar to what America's done, or is it just as simply as creating laws that prevent this unchecked power from happening?
I would not feel comfortable saying we need, an upper house of parliament, or we need this or we need that, because that is, there are positives and negatives to every single model, right? I think that a conversation about who we are and what our boundaries are as a country and civilization is a worthy endeavor. But how should we approach that is a 5-hour conversation with,
It would be very difficult to model on some other country's experience in New Zealand too. I don't like this idea of exceptionalism. I don't like it when America thinks it's exceptional, and I certainly don't like it when New Zealand thinks it's exceptional. Actually, we're all humans on this planet. But I do concern myself with, I think we're the only country whose founding document is a treaty with its founding people. And therefore, there is something different and unique that we have to work through for our constitution. And as you say, there are some really, really good, there's already huge work done here. We just need to start taking the steps.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, the relationship of Te Tiriti and its place, if New Zealand decides that it wants to maintain the same relationship with the Crown versus have another option like a republic, is a whole other layer, right? So that's not something for just me on one podcast to propose.
Now, moving along, let's sort of start focusing on your decision to stand as a candidate for the Opportunity Party.
Sure.
How did you come to the decision? How did you come to the point of making that decision?
I had a couple meetings with Ian Lees-Galloway, the general manager, and with Q, and I liked what they had to say. I think that I never really paid too much attention to Opportunity, in all honesty, before they appointed Q in November. And when they did, I said, oh, that's a good decision. And that's going to be a very interesting election, right? And I just sort of watched, and I watched the messaging, and I watched some of the, policy outlines come through, and got increasingly interested in it. I have never needed to agree with everything that a party is doing in order to get work done, right? So I, in either nonprofit roles or whatever it is, I've worked with every single party in Parliament. And when a member of any party, I have never agreed with everything that they say, right? I just need them to have the courage of their convictions. And I found that with Opportunity, but not with others.
Yeah, fair enough. So would you Now, there's something going around all around social media at the moment about the Opportunity Party, that the Opportunity Party is the centrist party. This is the catchphrase that's out there. Would you consider would you define the Opportunity Party position as being centrist?
I think that people can define themselves however they want. I don't think that centrism, I find it politically meaningless. Yeah. Because it's the center between which 2 points. What do you mean, right? And I think that it has a little bit of an implication of perpetual capitulation, where no matter how unreasonable one of the poles is and how good the other pole is, you're going to meet in the middle no matter what, and that's your position. And that is not something that I defend, and that's not something that I see an opportunity. I describe us as consensus builders. All right, so instead of saying, I won't work with Team Red or Team Blue, you say, I will work with this idea for whoever wants to get it across the table, right? I think the best example of that is our energy policy. So I think our energy policy was one of the first ones that we released earlier in the year.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And at the time, it was really pushing boundaries, right? Even when Q spoke at Electrify Queenstown, the National Party, for instance, did not support the Ratepayers Assistance Scheme. And then 2 weeks ago or something, they came out with a policy that has quite a lot of ties to it. So I think that sometimes when we say we're consensus builders, that can be seen as politically naive because we are in a political space that is so contentious that the idea of finding common ground seems impossible. Yeah. But I think this is a really good example of how we have seen it. So whether National or Labour are in power, we're very confident we can work with either of them to massively electrify New Zealand, put rooftop solar on people's roofs, get people warmer, lower people's bills.
Absolutely. Now, it's funny that you mentioned this, the term politically naive, because I feel that Opportunity gets tagged with that a lot, that type of label, mainly because they've never been in government. So, of course, it's easy, as a new party that hasn't actually made it to government yet, it's easy to come in and promise different things and promise the world and make all these wild assumptions about what you're going to do. But I guess from there, that's where the political naivety comes from. What's your view on being labelled as politically naive?
I mean, I think that it's a fine thing for people to be concerned about, of course, you know. Ultimately, I think so much of the appeal of Opportunity has been that fresh voice. Yeah. You know, you can accuse somebody of naivety, but what is the alternative? Nihilism? We're just going to say that, you know, the other team sucks, so 50% of the time nothing is going to get done and everything's going to be pretty bad. And, you know, from a personal perspective, I have a lot of experience getting wins in unlikely political circumstances. So having lived through and having done that, I reject the idea that there is anyone I can't work with in this country in particular, because I've done it.
Well, so what's an example of those wins that you talk about?
Sure. So, for instance, as the chair of Fired Up Stilettos, we have actively campaigned for sex workers' rights since our founding in 2023. One thing that we have very heavily campaigned for is the right to collectively bargain while staying independent contractors, right? So collectively bargaining is exactly what it sounds like, right? Either through a union or just a group of you, whatever it is, you're trying to fight for better conditions and you say we are doing this as a group rather than each individual person trying to negotiate a contract individually. That was illegal in New Zealand. Currently still is because it hasn't passed. So
which bit is illegal?
Yeah, collectively bargaining as independent contractors, because under the Commerce Act of 1986, it was seen as illegal price fixing. So independent contractors are workers and we are our own businesses, right? So when businesses group together and try to particularly set prices, that's considered illegal price fixing. And it is good that that's illegal, right? Because cartel behavior, price fixing ends up raising prices dramatically for consumers. It restricts competition. It's very anti-market behavior. So in 1986, we didn't really have the gig economy in the way that we do now, but that is still what we were regulated under. So it's not just that businesses had no obligation to come to the table, it's that collective bargaining was literally illegal and we could have been prosecuted and faced thousands of dollars in fines. Right. So, fired up stilettos when we decided to pivot to trying to focus a bit more on getting this through a government bill rather than a member's bill. The current coalition had already announced that they have a planned review of the Commerce Act and the Fair Trading Act, both of 1986, because they're trying to modernize competition and contract law, basically. And through some of the hearings that we had, particularly with the Commerce Commission and with MB, we realized this was a real opportunity. And so we lobbied every party in Parliament, yes, and had excellent relationships with every single one of them.
Wow.
And the Commerce Act Amendment Bill has passed its first reading quite easily. And then we gave feedback at the select committee stage. And it has cross-party support. I don't think there's anybody who's objecting to it.
Wow.
And so we will have the ability to collectively bargain, presumably at the end of this parliamentary term. It is likely to sail through the House. And that is something that sex workers have been fighting for years, right? And I want to make it clear, the government was very clear that they're like, we're not going to be the new sex worker rights party or something like that, right? They said that we are doing this because we are pro-competition and pro-freedom of contract.
Right.
That benefits us, right? So they didn't actually do this for sex workers. They did this for all independent contractors. So including people like courier drivers strongly benefit from this. And we actually think that ends up being a much more progressive and useful way of creating that legislation, because you're not exceptionalizing a vulnerable community yet again. There were previously exceptions. So screen industry workers, share milkers had separate legislation that allowed them to bargain as contractors. And you can just do that in perpetuity where each,
so each little sector could have just come in and made
what a waste of time.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And so it was really great that, the coalition, MPs from each party were very clear that they're like, this is not a sex worker thing. We support small business. You're small business owners.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And I think that's one of the reasons why I am very comfortable engaging in a cross-party consensus model in this country, because everyone in this country is to the left of the mainstream Democratic Party in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Where I've also had to get things done under unlikely circumstances, right? So when people tell me, that either this party is too left or this party is too right, I don't think there is a left in this country. Everybody is some version of classically liberal. Yeah. Classical liberalism is not on the left. Yeah. And the distinctions between them are quite minute. Yeah. And you can have a real human connection with people, with MPs here, in large part, because of what I talked about, that access, right? You talk about the real human problem you're facing, and I have not had any MPs be rude or dismissive toward what people presume is a powerless and stigmatized demographic, right? And there's a number of things that have been passed that are very anti-worker under this government, and we have criticized them openly.
Yeah.
We are proud that we have worked very hard as a team and found how we can make our needs align with their goals in this particular instance, right? The fight is not over, but we've gotten a significant win.
Right. Okay, thank you for outlaying all of that. 100% understand and agree with that, actually. I love the fact that you come in looking like it's a focused change only for that sector, but for it to, of course, apply to any independent contractor.
Yeah.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
You should be able to collectively bargain as independent contractors under certain circumstances. You don't want monopolised companies doing that sort of thing. Yeah.
And we also appreciate the objection that both Labour and the Greens gave, right? So there's some limits to our collective bargaining ability. The principal, the third party that hires, can still discriminate or fire you for collective bargaining.
Yep.
And that is a significant weakness of the bill. And so it's, an example of we accept the wins when they come, and we agree with the ways that it can keep getting better, and we're continually moving forward no matter what. Genuinely, anyone who says, this or that government is in charge, so the only thing to do is wait 3 years for there a change.
Right.
I can't do anything for 3 years. Skill issue.
And I think that's the power of a small party. You of course, if you've got something that can resonate with both sides, especially, let's go with the term centrist. If you're a centrist party, but both sides of the spectrum agree with some idea that you have, of course, why wouldn't you put it forward? Why would you need to position yourself to the left and say, I have to wait 3 years until they change a government?
I think it's a reframing thing, right? And I think that where, we could align with people who say that they're a bit more on the right, cutting red tape has become really synonymous with right-wing ideology, right?
Yeah.
I think rewiring Aotearoa has been an incredible model for that, right? Rewiring has gotten all political parties on board with rooftop solar and mass electrification. Now we're just debating over how to pay for it, how to do it, but they've really brought everybody on board, right? And it's actually, of all things, David Seymour's Ministry of Regulation that ended up commissioning a report on some of the limitations of New Zealand regulation that were preventing plug-in solar, particularly for renters. And I remember when Mike Casey, they did a big thing where David was at his farm cutting the red tape and all this. And it was interesting how everyone on the left just lambasted him. Right? How could you possibly do this event with him? Don't you know he doesn't really care about this? And it was so interesting to watch it because it was so self-defeating, right? You finally have a minister with the power to get something that you wanted to move forward, and you're mad because the wrong person was saying it. And that's just a waste of time.
I mean, that's a problem on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
The right does that with left policies too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is one of the most annoying things I find about New Zealand politics is that they'll throw an idea away because it wasn't their idea, not because it's a bad idea. It's actually, in some cases, it's a great idea, but they just throw it away.
I mean, that's not a New Zealand thing. That's that's certainly a politics thing. People want to claim credit because they want to stay there and they think their version of the thing is the best way to do the thing. And, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think it's honestly one of opportunity's most beneficial roles in this election. I'm so proud to work with Q because she has modeled that really healthy kind of communication and modeled the way that we should be focusing on policies and politics and where are the kind of alignments that we can find. And I've tried to do that in my own campaign down here, right? So I've messaged all of the candidates from the other parties in the electorate and can say something nice about each of them and have had, a decent conversation with each of them. And I think particularly as surely the youngest and also the only woman, that ends up being beneficial as well. And it means that when we are colleagues together, we can possibly get something done together, because we found those points of alignment instead of just throwing trash at each other for 90 days and then hoping you can work together.
Yeah.
Can I jump in with a couple of things a bit closer to home? I realise that electorate, you may probably reasonably unlikely to expect the electorate seat, but there's some really big things happening in this area that are really important to people, I think. And I think probably number one is the exploitation of Queenstown, of its natural environment and its communities in order to serve the national economy goals.
I have described us as being used as a cash cow in another interview.
I wasn't going to be quite so rude, but that's exactly what it is. And I was really interested to see your experience growing up in Miami to be that. And you mentioned about how your childhood was actually boring and how there was no transport systems for you as a child. It's one of the things I've banged on about for years, is how do you get the 14-year-old around? How do you make the transport system work for everybody, not just for car owners? But I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your thoughts on Queenstown being a natural attractor to its natural world, and yet it's exploited, constantly exploited for what it can give the national economy.
Yes. Man, a lot of things going on in there.
There is. So just a general view of what...
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I were to look at the root of what that problem is, it's the having all the responsibility for the economy, but none of the power. So any time in which a community has...
And maybe none of the investment too?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, investment money is power, right? Who gets to spend the money, who gets to take it, who gets to put it where? That's always a question of power. And so, that's what I really see happening in local communities all throughout New Zealand. I think Queenstown is a particularly egregious example of that devolution of local decision making, which is the opposite of what many of the governments currently, or the parties currently in power, campaigned on, right? It was supposed to be a lot more local decision making, and we've seen instead a strong push towards centralization. So I would, support more local decision making for not only Queenstown, but also the electorate, particularly since it's such an enormous electorate. I would say that's necessary. The people, and this electorate goes from Queenstown to the Catlins, Gore, Te Anau. Those people have very different interests. And I think in many ways, I understand why it's set that way. So each, electorate has roughly equal population. But it means, I think inherently, that so many people are not getting their needs met. And more power and decision making should be given to local communities rather than expecting one MP or one party or one coalition to effectively policy make on that local scale for every single one. I think that's unrealistic.
Which leads us nicely into any views you have around amalgamation of councils. Do you have any views of that, on that?
They're developing. I went to an environment Southland conference the other day in Invercargill, and what was really striking to me and what I really enjoyed was them talking about how some things to do with possibly transport or can be split up in a number of different ways, but catchments have to be the groundwork, right? You cannot divide the catchment.
But we already have. I mean, Southland and Otago should be and this side of the Clutha.
And that was heavily discussed. And so I think that's a very good example of how, I'm not a freshwater ecologist, right? Oh, sorry. But freshwater ecologists have quite a lot of expertise and how that should be divided and how that should work. And I do not believe that almost anyone in Wellington understands that dynamic between Invercargill and Southland and the various catchments that overlap and divide each other. So I would agree with, I think, what most of the council have said, that the timeline is outrageous. But there could be an opportunity to build something better.
I don't think anybody doesn't think that reform should happen. Everybody believes in reform.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you or others feel about what I would consider government overreach into telling people the timeline, and that if you don't have it done in 3 months, we'll do it for you. Mm-hmm. That seems like terrible overreach. And also on that point,
absolutely.
If you look at the catchments, which it's interesting you went and looked at that, and I think when you do look at catchments, you start going, there's the natural lines.
Yeah, exactly.
And interestingly, that's exactly how Runaka do it. Mm-hmm. And the Runaka south of the Clutha is one lot, north of the Clutha is another lot. Yeah. I don't know, just putting it out there.
Yep. That was well discussed. Justin Tipa brought that up, and agree with you. It's another example of too much, too fast, and for what purpose? That's not clear. There is a strong emphasis on the idea that amalgamation will increase efficiency.
Is there an example of that?
Is that so? I would love to see
looking at Auckland Super City.
Yeah. And somebody who had been involved in the Super City process also spoke to that as well.
And what'd they say?
Quite a lot of cautions, yeah. And I think that, that's a criticism that I'd have of a lot of the approach in general, right? That if you have a better idea, so I said this the other night at another event you were at, one of the rules I've always had in any kind of community organizing is that if you object to something or you're going to block it, fine. You have to have another idea in its place. You can't just say, no, we're not doing that. So what are we doing? I don't know. We'll figure it out, but we're going to do it. And that's a lot of the approach that I've seen here, right? Where if you have a better idea, amazing, let's see it. Yeah. But if you smash the thing before you actually go through the consultation process and the building of what the replacement will be, I think it's very unfair. It creates, a lot of chaos, but also it means that if you smash the thing, by definition, almost anything is better than the smashed thing. So it's a very low bar, and we should aim higher than that.
I love that point. If you smash the thing, anything's better than the smashed thing.
Yeah.
Could you equally apply that to what's going on in our health system?
Yeah, sure.
And our conservation system?
I would say the Inter-Islander ferries are maybe the best example of that. Spending $500 million to not get boats is maybe one of the most extraordinarily ridiculous financial decisions I've seen.
I wanted to pop back to your comment, Corey, about parties being naive and a new party being naive. And I would like to just point out that naivety isn't just the domain of new parties. When we think about State Highway 1 effectively being, the Cook Strait, and it's being interrupted and smashed in this way, and also National's promises around versus delivery around the roads of national significance, for example, which we now know are not going to be delivered, despite the promises.
That's right.
Do you have to spare $20 billion?
Yeah, exactly.
Something like 300 million has already just been spent in doing various things, talking about it. So, that is a very naive thing.
100%. And honestly, I was hoping that Minister for Rail would maybe have a better idea or a better influence on that. Because if we, instead of relying so much on trucking freight, particularly down here, instead integrated trains for everything and electrified them.
Well, boats.
As well.
Coastal shipping.
Yes.
We used to have, I think we used to have 35 coastal shipping boats, and now we've got one.
Wouldn't it be great if we had boats that you could drive a train onto and then it would sail over and you had road?
Well, that's for the State Highway 1, and you should have that. So in terms of naivety, it's I almost think that the naivety of our parties when they're in opposition and what they promise and fail to deliver. I mean, we could say the same about Labor with its housing plan and things like that. So that was a good point. I like that from you, Corey. The other thing I was thinking about was how do we take back control of our parliament, which we are seeing that control leaking to corporates.
Yeah.
Do you have a view on how that's happening, especially coming from America where that process is so well in place that now in Delaware I see looking at giving a vote to their corporates. A company can have its own vote, which essentially does not mean one person, one vote anymore, does it? Because if one person owns a company and the company has a vote and they have a vote, that's two.
Almost no one person owns a company, particularly in Delaware, right? So I am very curious about how the board will vote. I don't actually know how they're planning on gaming that out. Delaware is a very unusual state. It has the most friendly corporate law in all of America.
And no taxes.
Which is why everyone incorporates in Delaware, right? So, the vast majority of companies, even if they've never been to Delaware and have nobody there, they incorporate there and open their initial public offering, so that they can use the Delaware courts.
Which actually takes me to...
Which is one of the problems with states, quite honestly.
That's right. So a refinement of that question, of the kind of question or the subject matter I'm putting to you would actually be, how would you think about, or how does the Opportunity Party think about corporate influence in government?
So this is actually one of my favorites of our policies, and I think we'll probably highlight it a bit more at one point in time when we're talking about cleaning up politics. So we have proposed officially having a lobbying register and having a limit on donations. So not just on declaring, a actual limit. How much of that, how that looks is, of course, a discussion with various parties, political parties, and also things like the Electoral Commission and things like that. But I think it is indisputable that New Zealanders are losing faith in their democracy, right? And what's really important about that is not that people will believe something is true if it is untrue. The greatest danger, I think, is that people will not believe something that is true, even if it is true.
And
right?
America's a really good example of that happening.
And there's deep cuts into your culture when you start allowing that to happen.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially in a place this small, right? The level of interconnectedness and access that everyone has to everyone is pretty wild, right? There's very little barriers to that kind of communication, and so it is something that we have very strongly said would be something we'd be trying to push forward, and. Aside from political parties, other political parties, we have yet to have anybody disagree.
So this is a good segue into another question I had, which is for you personally, what are the Opportunity Party policies that resonate with you the most? Yeah. Do you have any policy positions that you really feel strongly about that the Opportunity Party has?
I think our abundant energy policy is the one that I feel most strongly about, because it was the one that was so strongly shaped by advocates that I really respect, and it's also one that is absolutely achievable. Right. I like to say that if you are engaging in any kind of organizing, political or community, it sounds kind of funny, but you have an obligation to win. And people sometimes contest that because they're like, well, you can't always help that, right? And it's like, no, you have an obligation to have a win. You cannot just constantly be on a treadmill of trying in perpetuity. You burn people out, you get nothing done, you cause cynicism. You have to have something that says, people wanted this, it was a great idea, and then we did a great idea, and then we made this country a better place. If you are unable to offer that, you don't really have any business organizing, right? And so abundant energy is a thing that will substantially improve everything in New Zealand, and we can achieve it no matter who is in power. Right. So that's a thing that I strongly support. And then on the terms of like local decision making, Opportunity Party supports citizens' assemblies, which I really, really like.
That's different. That's different. I like the idea.
Yeah. So I think, again, a funded citizens' assembly, because when people hear that, they hear, oh, more meetings where nobody listens to me. You know, we've all gone to a select committee where 99% of people say, don't dissolve the Ministry for the Environment, and it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have that, because, again, that just breeds cynicism. And so citizens' assembly is a little bit like jury duty, in which you have a random but representative sample of a population. They are paid for their time. They're given the amount of time that they need to make a decision. They can call in this expert, whatever it is that they want. And I think it's very important that the decision is binding, or you're just sitting around having a yarn. You know?
We talked about a few weeks ago, Corey and I, about capital gains taxes.
Yeah.
Or just probably better to say
all the tax policies,
and compared them. And we actually came to the conclusion we really liked the Opportunity set of policies, suite of taxes, and how they might think about that.
As long as it's described in tandem with the citizens' income.
Yeah, it's a whole suite. It's a difficult one too.
But the issue is, we couldn't find anywhere in the world that had actually made those things successful, so we pointed that out.
New Zealand
did. Yeah. Denmark did.
Yeah, long time ago.
Voted. Gone.
Yep.
So what is it that makes you feel that the conditions might be conducive to that again? That some people, once they're over, I don't know, whatever your limits were, that they would be willing to pay. Because if they're not willing to pay, and this is what's happened, we're seeing the capital flight from areas and capital people, and people say, oh, well, nobody's going to want to leave their lifestyle in New Zealand. Well, guess what? And even a tax on your several million past you'll ever be able to spend in your lifetime still causes people to leave. They
100%.
Will not pay that.
Yep.
So how do you think you could possibly get something like that across the line? You know, even if you had support from other parties.
I love that you asked about tax. I started a candidate Substack, and I've written exactly one article thus far because I've been so busy. But it was specifically on this. So it was a wealth tax versus capital gains tax versus land value tax. So let me address why I am critical of the other two options first, right? So a capital gains tax does not disincentivize land banking. With a capital gains tax, you only get taxed on the sale, right? So if you never sell, you never get taxed. However, I think that a lot of people who want some kind of egalitarian tax reform, they have never actually had much to do with really wealthy people. Right? So they don't actually know how billionaires move their wealth, because it's not their world. Why would you know, right? And so the most important thing to understand is that people at a very high net worth need debt. They desire debt. The relationship to debt, if you are working class versus if you are very, very wealthy, is completely different, right? So if you are wealthy, you tend to want to leverage your assets, right? So you take a bank loan off of whatever asset it is that you have. Technically, you're like 100 million or whatever it is in debt, and you just pay the interest on that loan, even if it's like 7% or something like that. That's much less than you would be paying in taxes. And since you've made a loss on paper on everything, you're not taxed on those sort of things, right? So a capital gains tax would further incentivize that kind of behavior. If you never sell, you don't get taxed on that asset, whatever it is, and then you can just constantly use each house or asset, whatever it is, to borrow against the other one to pay off the interest and leverage the debt in perpetuity. So it can really incentivize land banking in that way. And that is even more so with something like a wealth tax, right? If you expand it to, all large assets or all property, again, all you do is you incentivize leveraging debt in perpetuity. There's some ways that you could get around that, but that would require international cooperation on the scale that we simply do not have. Right?
Delaware and Ireland exist.
Yeah, right. Is the Cayman Islands exist, right? The Panama Papers came out, and the only thing that happened is the reporter was murdered.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I think it is unfortunate that a lot of people who want to see more egalitarian structural change, it doesn't seem to have occurred to them to think about it from the opposite perspective, right? A lot of people say, like, in an ideal world, this is how much tax we would get from this. For me, the way to question your tax policy is, imagine I am a nefarious bad faith actor. How can I most easily wiggle out of the trap you've set for me? Right? And that's the real question of your tax policy and of any policy, right? Like, because I advocate for marginalized communities, anytime we're proposing something, you have to imagine you are an inherently bad faith actor. How can I exploit this? And that is how you make policy.
This is how regulation should be applied.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's knowing that people are going to try and circumvent the rules.
Yeah.
It's to close every door you can think of, not just let's address this one small problem we have without thinking about, well, how are they going to get around it and what's the impact going to be?
Yeah.
Because I just feel like we're chasing our tail with allowing rich people to keep finding a different loophole to...
And I think that, again, like how we're defining rich people is maybe the problem as well, especially in Southland, right?
Let's start with billionaire.
And again, billionaire is different from, a lot of other folks in Southland, right? Who are, might be very asset rich or something like that. And so particularly those folks in Queenstown especially, but also all of Southland, our land value tax is something that people have felt very, very afraid of, right? So we have not yet released, what's our bottom line, what is this that we must have, et cetera. But I have seen Q say this a number of times, so I feel comfortable revealing it, right? Where we are not under the illusion that as a new party, first time in Parliament, we are going to change the entire structure of taxation in New Zealand. That's unrealistic, right? And it doesn't mean that, we're saying, we're throwing it away or something, right? The idea is we're more presenting the concept. Currently, New Zealand taxes just work and purchases, right? GST. Those are two things that you want people to do in an economy, right? You want people to work, you want people to buy stuff. If people stop doing either of those things, your entire economy collapses. Economic policy directs behavior in a number of really important ways. So if you disproportionately tax the things that you want people to do, in some ways you're disincentivizing the very outcomes that you want, right? So if we want people to buy stuff in New Zealand and we want people to work and stay in New Zealand, then we need to shift that tax burden away from those things onto something that we find less desirable, we as a community, not just a party, right? What is undesirable in New Zealand is having an economy that is exclusively buying and selling houses to each other. So the idea behind the idea behind a land value tax is that if we put a little bit of a tax on land, we can lower taxes on income. That's the
That's the shift from taxing labour to taxing capital, money, whatever it is.
So, and that is the plan. That is the goal. Think of it as like, that's the North Star, right? How that works, what the numbers are, those are things that will, we have presented a plan, our proposal of how this could and should work. And as you mentioned, it's very, very important that any tax on land is always accompanied with fewer taxes on something else. We've proposed that as a citizen's income, which is a tax-free threshold of almost $20,000, right? If you have just one without the other, all you've done is raise taxes significantly, made life more difficult for everyone, and we don't want to do that. So I can say very strongly that we would not support doing one without the other.
Yeah.
Because that would be really irresponsible and it would harm New Zealanders, and that's not what we're trying to do, right? So we have proposed a 10-year implementation plan where you basically start off, with like 0.5%, like going up in a period of years. And a lot of the point of that is so that if you have any kind of unforeseen consequences or negative residuals, you're able to fix that in policy before you've caused some kind of catastrophic issue, right? I've had some people message, like under this tax, I would have this tax bill next year or something. No. That's not ever what's going to happen. That's not the plan. That's not even what we want. Right? If we get to be, if we were able to implement everything, this would still be a slow 10-year implementation plan. However, for everyone in Queenstown who does have land that is valued very highly and is concerned about that, we are aware that we're not going to fundamentally dictate the new taxation system of New Zealand. But this is something that we have to address at some point. Right? New Zealand has an aging population. We have fewer workers for people who are approaching retirement. We have a disproportionate number of assets that are held in a smaller and smaller number of people. And if we continue on this trajectory, will New Zealand become a better country, or will it become a country that fewer and fewer people want to live in? I think is the general point that we should focus on.
Yeah. What are your top 3 the Opportunity Party policies that resonate with you?
Okay.
So I think one of them was the electrify.
Yep. So number one, I would say is abundant energy. Number 2 is clean up politics. So what we talked about with lobbying and limits to donations. And 3, more local decision making, particularly in the form of citizens' assemblies. That could look like a number of different things. And the reason for that is I think it adds into lots of other concerns. So with transport, with environment, with education. And so I am being a little bit cheeky there where I'm like, it could be a one-stop shop.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Citizens' Assembly sounds like a great idea. I agree with it in concept. However, having sat on a jury myself, I have no faith that other people can make rational decisions given
Important to acknowledge that a court system is fundamentally different, right? So a trial is an inherently antagonistic system where you have 2 people that are trying to get as close to lying to you as they can in order to convince you of something else. Whereas with a citizens' assembly, it's much more directed by the actual participants, and they're able to call in whatever experts it is that they want and this or that, rather than just having 2 people who are very skilled in social manipulation litigate in front of you.
That's a great point. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because I agree with you 100% as well.
And we have not released all of our policies yet as well. So there's going to be, maybe I'll have a new favorite 3 when we have more details coming out, but those are the 3 right now.
I personally think there's a great opportunity to have more of these discussions. As you know, I'm a big fan of, as you both know, I'm a big fan of the Opportunity Party. I've been for a long time. I'm looking for a change in attitude in Parliament. It's not so much a change of policy or anything else. It's really just to get away from this 2 sides way of approaching our policy making. It's getting really annoying to me. I feel like the Opportunity Party offers that. I think parts of the Greens offer that too. But I feel like the Greens message is so anti-right wing, which is nothing wrong with that, to be honest. But I feel that, I don't know, it's sort of the message gets lost in the attacks on both sides. So I want to lighten the mood a little bit now and give you some final few questions before we wrap up.
Okay.
So first question, the hardest question of all from today. What is your favourite song on your current Spotify list?
I don't have Spotify. I use Tidal. Yep. But pays more to artists. I don't remember which song I can name, but I'll give you 2 artists.
Okay.
So both friends of mine. Nabo is one, Taranaki Young Grace. They are an incredible Takatapui artist in Poneke, who, they make great music. And then Diva Mahal is another friend of mine in Poneke, also a singer. And I tend to just put on albums by either of them and just listen.
Nice. That sounds great. Another hard-hitting question coming your way.
Yeah.
This one, maybe you have to have a little bit of a think about it. So if someone had to play Bianca in a movie about your life, who would that person be?
Oh, gosh. Is this like who's your celebrity lookalike or something?
Well, it doesn't have to be a lookalike.
Yeah.
The person that you feel would play you the right way.
Yeah, I know so few actors and celebrities that I feel like I genuinely do not know the answer to that. Who do you think? Who do I look like?
Who do you look like?
Yeah.
I don't know. A young Courtney Cox, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Who else? I don't know the young ones because
I got Natalie Portman a little bit when I was younger.
Natalie Portman.
Yeah, I got that sometimes.
Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
There you go. Great choice.
Sure.
Yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with anyone, past or present, who would that person be and why?
Ooh. Well, I guess I'd say Georgina Beyer.
Nice.
She was my favorite MP.
Nice.
Quite a big role model.
Yeah.
And her legacy is particularly relevant this election.
Yes.
And I just love that what she was able to do in 1999 in Carterton, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that her legacy is what reminds us that demanding more for ourselves, or in opportunity parlance, expecting better, is not naive.
Yeah.
It is what we should be doing because we have done it before. And I refuse to yield to the idea that we were more progressive and further along as a country in 1999 in a way that we cannot possibly attain in 2026.
Yeah, I think it's hope when you think about it in that way. She most certainly was a political trailblazer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. Thank you. Do you have any final comments at all before we wrap up?
I guess from an opportunity standpoint, mostly just emphasizing that we have a really different strategy this election. So although I am running in the Southland electorate, we're going for the party vote here. So if people want to split their vote, they are more than welcome to do so. The way that we're going to get opportunity into Parliament is likely through the party vote. Rather than just the electorate. So that's a very different strategy from what we've had previously.
Yes.
So just reminding people of the new tech.
Great. Yeah. So if you're out there listening, and if Bianca has at all swayed you towards the opportunity vote, then, and even if you're sitting on the fence, that's okay. We only need the party vote. You can still vote for your favourite candidate if they're from a different party, but if you could give the top or the Opportunities Party, your party vote, that would certainly help a different voice get into Parliament for the benefit of
Kingmaker.
us. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming along. This has been a great chat. We've gone way over time.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me talk at you.
That's fine. That's fine. Appreciate you as well, Alexa. Thank you for coming and giving some hard-hitting questions as well.
Thank you.
So if you enjoyed that, can you please pop us a like down the bottom there? Remember to subscribe to the channel, please. We get a lot of viewers, but we don't get many subscribers. And we'll see you next time on The Tune. Mā te wā.